Welcome to the Fine Print, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Caleb Teskey, and today I'm joined by Brian Box Brown from Philadelphia. Man, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
I gotta say, I've been trying to line this one up since the middle of March, and I'm glad we finally made it happen here, man.
Yeah, me too, man. Thanks.
Before I start in with any conversation, I like to ask all my new guests to share a 5 minute life story, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about your background.
Um, okay, so I started making comics um in my late 20s. Um, and got really into autobiographical comics and stuff like that. Eventually, it became just biographical stuff, and I did a book about Andre the Giant. I also did I did a book also called Cannabis: The Illegalization of Weed in America, which is available still. Um, and through that process, kind of got and being part of the Pennsylvania medical uh, cannabis world, I kind of got more and more into cannabis activism, and not I was kind of like not seeing a consumer patient perspective in the media like at all, and and I just felt like I needed to. I felt like if I could use comics as like the one thing I'm good at, it as a way to contribute to what's going on in this world. And I started my comic strip called Legalization Nation, which runs weekly.
And now, these books that you made, are those also comics, or is this just straight writing?
They're all comics, yeah, graphic novels, but nonfiction.
Hmm.
So
I'd love to get a hold of those.
yeah, please do. I got a really kind of lame email from somebody I won't say who, but it was kind of disheartening because they were like, I don't. I think I think people feel that cannabis smokers don't read,
Hmm.
and I was like, oh, that's kind of that stinks. So I think that that's not true though. I think that's like just part of you know cannabis stereotyping and stigma that's been going on for a really long time. So if you buy my books, you will prove that person wrong.
Absolutely. And now, you said you are a medical patient.
Yeah.
Would you mind telling us a little bit about maybe the medical program over there in Pennsylvania?
The medical program in Pennsylvania is um, a very restrictive system in the sense that you know the companies that make up the market are extremely limited. There's I think 20 companies. I think like 18 or like 16 of them are multi-state operators. Um, there's like one or two or three maybe Pennsylvania companies, um, which are not doing too great right now, and all kind of looking to get bought out by larger companies anyway. Um, Prices are really high, quality is really low.
What are we talking about? Like an ounce of flour?
So you can't. So I haven't really shopped at the dispensary in a while, admittedly, but I try to keep tabs on pricing. So I might be off, but the last time I was in there, you could not purchase. You had to purchase everything by the eighth, right? So, and we're talking between like 45 and 65 an eighth. So if you wanted to buy an ounce, whatever, that times eight.
No
Um,
discount.
there are discounts and stuff. So like a lot of people, you kind of if you are trying to like save money, like at least pay like quasi normal pricing, you like have to live and die by those discounts. So it'll be like this brand is on sale Tuesday, this brand is on sale, whatever, another day. Um, and so like you gotta like follow those, and then maybe you go in that day and the strain you like isn't there or has been sold out because it's like popular strain or whatever. So then it's really like, but anyway, you go in there. I've had times where I've saved a lot of money from like discounts and like points. You go in there and basically you got like a decent deal with all these different discounts and stuff being on sale. And then you get home and you smoke it and you're like, you know what, this isn't good for any price. Because
That bad, huh?
because I mean, I don't know. Some places might be better than others, some brands, but it's not. If you're going in there and paying 65 and 8 times 8, $500 basically for this ounce, you want it to at least be like pungent odor. You know what I mean?
For $500, it better be the fucking Chronic.
Yeah, exactly. It's just crazy. Like I was talking to a friend the other day, like how could you? It's like impossible to judge what you're about to buy because you don't get to even see it until you pay for it, and then it's like it's in a box and in the plastic jar or whatever, and then you get home and you're able to look at it. And I was like, what if you were buying like lettuce and you go to the grocery store and it's just it's in a box and you can't even like look at the lettuce or like see if it's picked the freshest lettuce or like whatever. You have no idea what it's going to be like when you open it, and it's like you can't really make a informed purchase that way. But I also couldn't afford the prices, and just like I was like, well, why is it like this? And that led me down a rabbit hole of just all the worst things in like the country and all these different why legal cannabis look the way it does, and like why isn't it what everyone envisioned when they were like, yeah, we'll legalize it and sell it, it'll be great. Why isn't it that?
It's interesting you mentioned that because I've had a number of people here in Vermont tell me something similar where you could get your medical herb delivered. Retail is not going to be allowed to deliver, but the medical dispensaries are allowed to deliver.
Mm-hmm.
But you're just picking it off of a website. So you find a picture and then they said the same thing when it gets there. Sometimes it's not really what was pictured, but that you're saying when you go into it as a dispensary, you still don't even get to look at it.
No, you don't get it till you don't get to do anything with it until you leave the building.
Not a little whiff, nothing.
Nothing. No, like they don't smell jars. There's nothing. No way for you even to know. Like if you're gonna like it, I feel like So I've met when you purchase in other places, when I purchase on the legacy market, it's often like here's a whole bunch of stuff. Tell me whichever you want. And you kind of like, oh, this one looks pretty good. Look,
right.
Smell. You're like, oh, that one, yeah, whoa, that one's crazy. Yeah, give me that one. You can like tell right away which one do you like, and I really feel that your nose knows.
Yeah,
your nose knows like
absolutely
what you're gonna enjoy, and it's just like so essential to the buying process. I mean, that's not why I became an activist, I don't think, but I was just thinking about that the other day and how like that is such like a misunderstood thing. It's indicative, right? All this stuff is safety features. The reason you don't get to open it or look at it and smell it is because of safety, and it's like indicative of like all these regulations, like the regulations that are there specifically to raise startup costs, to push small business out of the market, and make it so you have to have a lot of money just to get started. That type of stuff. They can't just write the law and be like, I mean, they kind of can do this and do this, but they usually don't write down in the law, all right, you got to have millions of dollars to even be considered part of this program. That's not like how they do it. Usually what they do is they say, or lately anyway, when they try to write like fair legislation, like we see in like New Jersey and stuff like that, where they're like, yeah, you can apply for a license and we'll just, we'll do this super invasive vetting process for you, and then we'll get, you might be able to get a license over the course of a year, while you're trying to figure out what you're going to do when you get the license. And then you can have the license, but to get yourself up and running, it's going to cost you $1 million because there's no infrastructure that allows for cannabis growth or production or sales in this entire state. So you're going to have to build it from scratch, and then you have to own it outright because you can't take out a loan or anything, or all these different obstacles. So it's because the building where you grow the weed has to be built to these specific specifications in order they can track every single seed to the person in the computer, in the specific system that they allow only this many plants and this much square feet and this much blah blah blah, all these different things, which all don't necessarily lead to better quality product, patient safety, anything, or consumer safety or anything like that. But they do raise the startup cost for small businesses by large numbers, and for large businesses, but the corporations can afford that type of stuff and can recoup, those expenses immediately when they're up and running. They can handle that type of expense, and that the waiting, there's so much waiting involved where, you're waiting for the state to run through your preliminary application, credit check, background check, making sure that you specifically are one of the protected classes of social equity, whatever, all these different things. Then you get that done. Then you got to find a township that hasn't banned cannabis outright, because we're looking at like 70% of townships across the board in every state basically that's had adult use cannabis. 70% of localities just ban cannabis businesses outright. So now because they give so much power to the township to discriminate against cannabis businesses, now the real estate is even that much more difficult to obtain, the commercial real estate needed. And when you think about small business, like some of the largest, most successful companies in the world didn't start from a $1 million commercial property. They started in their own garage, on their kitchen table. And like the law as written prevents like almost all of that from happening, because they need this special commercial space built from the ground up. There's no infrastructure available. Like if you wanted to start, say you wanted to open a bar, for instance, there are bars that close all the time and have like a kitchen and taps and all these things
and a bar
already there. Yeah, everything. They got the whole thing already there. You just have to go in, and you don't have to build the infrastructure up from nothing if you don't have to, or any business, a hair salon. There's like hair salon closes. Do you open up a hair salon? They already have the chairs, those giant space helmet dryer things and stuff, but all of that stuff is not available for cannabis. So that is like another huge expense. And the cost of the infrastructure depends on the strictness of those regulations and what they're going to allow and what they're not going to allow, and how much all that costs ultimately the proprietor of the business to come into compliance. Like there's this whole two-step thing. It's like you can first get your license, then you have to spend all your money going into compliance, and we have to think about who is this there, who's that for? Is it for to make a safer product for the consumer? Because they're all saying it.
First of all, if you want to talk about a safe product, shouldn't you let your customers fucking look at it, smell it, There's something about
Yeah.
not being able to see what you're buying that doesn't scream this is a safe product to me.
Safe product, I know. And there's other things too, like stuff that doesn't even cost money. Like, all right, so in Colorado, if you buy something on the package, it tells you these are the inputs we put into this plant. Here's the nutrients we use.
Oh, no
Here's
shit.
all the it has all of that, and all that is a list of ingredients printed like super small on the package. That is not an expensive piece of regulation, but it's not found almost anywhere. That would be one thing that would keep consumers safe, or at least give consumers peace of mind that they know what is in vape products, right? They don't have to list all the ingredients or what additives are in the vapes. Like, they can just be like, this is liquid live resin. Meanwhile, it's like, X amount of THC, X amount of like lubricant that like help keep the oil able to flow better or whatever, added terpenes so it tastes so and so. So you don't have to put that stuff on the packaging. That's not expensive. You know what I mean? Like, that's not an added expense. Just listing the ingredients. The stuff that they do have to do is expensive. That doesn't necessarily protect a consumer as well as an ingredients list, for one.
And especially with edibles, I know this is something they were talking about a lot in Vermont, was like, okay, now if you got a food product, you got to list all of those ingredients along with your standard lab testing for your cannabis products.
Mm-hmm. It's just like the regulated product smoke screen has been used for a long time, for probably the last decade, to install unnecessary regulations, which, when you're installing all these unnecessary regulations, you're obviously missing the boat on regulations that are needed. So there's a lot of people out there that will be like, no regulations at all. That's not what I'm saying at all. I think that there could easily be safety regulations, but who are we protecting? I mean, what are the regulations for? Are we protecting the user from real dangers, or are we protecting non-users from inflated fake dangers that they've made up in their head that don't actually exist? Like, for instance, I don't want a cannabis business in my town because I don't want crime. And we look at the data and we see that if there is a legal access point for cannabis in your town, in that area where that is, crime goes down. So it's
Crazy.
like, yeah. So like, a lot of these decisions about what is regulated and what is safe are not actually to keep the consumer safe, to keep the non-consumer safe from something that's not actually dangerous. They just think it is. It's to assuage their fears.
Sure. And again, and if you run all these tests and you put the labels on the thing and you still don't let people fucking look at it before you sell it to them, what good is all that safety testing?
Yeah. I mean, it's all about the consumer making an educated decision. It's not, you know what I mean? It's like we just want to know what's in our stuff so we can, so we can pick the best thing that is for us. Like, if you're producing this stuff, what does you want? The consumer to be like, yes, I smelled this and looked at this and it was like the best thing. And then, but that's not the game they're playing. It's more about decreasing, making sure there's little to no competition, and then you don't have to worry about quality or anything like that. Because if you're the only game in town, I mean, they're not the only game in town, which is the funniest thing. It's like they convince themselves that, like in Florida, for instance, right? So Florida, medical program. There's like 20 companies or something, and they've convinced themselves that they're the only game in town. And meanwhile, they're ignoring this enormous illicit market for cannabis, which is scooping up tons of their customers, and they're pretending those customers don't exist. And it's just funny to me that how they just don't think they're competing with with the illicit market.
And it's funny. I have some friends in the illicit market who can't wait for cannabis to go legal here on October 1st in Vermont, because they believe that will actually make their product more competitive when we see $55 taxed eighths, or in Vermont we have a vape tax that's like 93%.
Oh yeah, I know.
It's fucking outrageous.
That's crazy.
I mean,
I know. I also think that's true, and also I think about this all the time. So in Philly, right, when you're driving through Philly, there's billboards everywhere for cannabis dispensaries, and I just think, like, if you're like driving home from work and you see a billboard for a cannabis dispensary, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to go straight to that cannabis dispensary. You're just thinking about cannabis, and you're going to go to whoever you want to go to get the best cannabis for the best price. So those are effectively billboards for the illicit market, because it's just promoting cannabis in general, and getting people excited and thinking about cannabis in the most, traveled roadways around. And that's why I'm like, you got to compete. You can't just pretend that they're not there, or that the cops are going to do your bidding for you by like crushing the black market and crushing the people that use the black market. That's just not going to happen.
Surely that would have happened by now if it was going to.
Yeah, and it's not going to. And so they just they're pushing by statute to keep these people off the books, basically, and demonize as much as possible. That's why I'm always talking about the legacy market, and like how they're like getting screwed by these companies too, because Curaleaf, $5 billion company, largest cannabis company in the world, right? Did they invent cannabis extract? No. Did they invent any of the most popular strains of cannabis that exist in the country and the world? No. Are they producing the best versions of them? No. Did they invent live rosin, hash, any of this stuff? No, they invented nothing. A pre-roll, their biggest selling product. No, they didn't invent any of this stuff. This is all products that were created by the legacy market, every single one of them, including all the most popular strains still. Always get big first in the legacy market, and then the corporate markets hope to obtain them. And so they're just profiting off of other people's work, and they can't innovate themselves, like, at all. Like, whenever you see like Trulieve or Curaleaf coming up with like a new product, it's like the dumbest, worst thing ever that like no one is clamoring for, and nobody wants.
Seen nasal, they're doing like nasal sprays. Like,
I mean, it's just like they can't think of, they don't know their customer base, really. And or they do, and their customer base is just like baby boomers that are in retirement, and they're not, it's not the rest of the, I mean, if that's what they're considering, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it's just so that whole thing is like such a problem everywhere.
And Curaleaf, if I'm not mistaken, just from sometimes for fun, I'll just type in the name of a company and then lawsuits, and then I'll see what pops up. Now, I believe for sure there was a massive recall of Curaleaf vape carts in Pennsylvania, and I believe Florida as well. They had a recall over 1 million vape carts for using unapproved additives. They also have been sued repeatedly for mislabeling THC gummies as CBD.
Mhm.
They also just a few weeks back were caught in New York falsifying lying about the potency,
The weight, yeah.
which I've
Yeah,
also
they're
caught here in
constantly,
Vermont.
yeah, they're constantly. I mean, they kind of see it as like, oh, we're the biggest company, so we're the biggest target. That's why there's so many lawsuits. But I don't. I mean, also they're at the center of a union busting lawsuit.
They were
Um,
stealing tips from their own employees.
yeah. So it's just like all of this stuff. It's like clear, but I mean, what do they have? Why are they so big? They have so much money, and they have so much influence in these state governments. Like they just march right in and say, "Look, we're the biggest company in the world. We're taking a license. You should run the whole system just like this." If you look at, they just like pick, the place where they dominate the most. Let's say Illinois, where there's like no competition, and it's all MSOs in the adult use stores. And they go in and they're like, "Look at Illinois. That's the perfect situation. We had everything under control there. Blah 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 blah." And the laws are a lot of times are being written by people that hate weed. Like not even like they're just begrudgingly writing this thing, and they actually like do not not they miss them. They don't know what weed is. They hate weed. They don't want to. They don't really want it to be legal or accessible. Um, so that's how the laws get written, and then regulators have to follow through with these like laws. So
These
it's a big
stupid things like THC caps, like we have here in Vermont.
yeah in Vermont. The THC caps in Vermont are funny to me because the THC cap for flower is like really high, and the THC cap for concentrates is really low. Like they're basically allowing all flower, like 30% THC. Like you're very rarely going to find flower that's higher than 30%
Yeah, I've
THC.
seen a couple, but yeah, it's rare.
But I feel like anything that's up in the high 30s and 40s is like inflating their THC numbers. But like 30% is pretty good. If I got a 30% THC flower, I'd be like, great. 60% THC concentrates are like not. It's less like hash. It's like not concentrated enough to be a real product. I mean, kind of. There's like, I feel like I've had some rosin that's like 63% THC and high in other terps and like good, but even that wouldn't be legal on the Vermont market. Although I've heard that they can kind of skirt these laws by listing some of the THC as THCA.
Yeah, they do like an aggregate.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But I don't know. We'll see, I guess. I mean, that does think it needs to be updated, and it's just like out of line with the rest of the
Well, it just seems like you're punishing people who are really good at what they do.
Yeah, it's like your concentrates are too good.
Right.
It doesn't have enough plant material left in it. And
Right. Like, do you think they would ever go to a pharmaceutical company and say, "Hey, this OxyContin's like way too strong, man"? Like,
yeah. Can you
you
put
want the
some
purest,
brand?
you want the purest product, right? Especially if you're making
Yeah,
medical products, don't you want
yeah, yeah.
that?
Mm. And it's just like also just like purely, there's no other states that do that. It would be putting a limiter on the Vermont cannabis market for like a third of the product, maybe more, because it's like all vape pens.
I think Connecticut also has THC caps, if I'm not mistaken.
Do they?
That's the only
Really?
other state.
Mhm. Is it like Vermont or is it
I'm not
like
sure.
85 or yeah? I
I'm
wonder.
not sure. Don't quote me on that. But again, to
Yeah.
your point here, strangely, the medical dispensaries, which are all five in Vermont, which have been bought out by these MSOs, are all exempt from the THC caps. They're exempt from the edible.
Oh.
The edible limit. The edible is 50 milligrams per package maximum, 5 milligrams per serving. So, but the medical dispensaries are exempt from that. The vape tax as well, so they'll be able to sell carts without paying that tax,
Right.
or their
I
wholesaler.
mean, look at that. That's just wild. That vape tax
Yeah, they lumped the tobacco or the nicotine because this is from when they were trying to get rid of the jewels, and
right.
somehow cannabis got lumped in with this because it's inhalable or whatever the fucking law says.
And yeah, that's out of step with everything else too. Yeah, I mean, like think about it. So that means that the adult use market in Vermont's going to be like pretty limited to like flower, certain types of concentrates like traditional hash and like whatever. The vape carts will be. I don't know if they would. I don't know if I would make a vape cart if I could only do 60% THC and it would cost an extra $100.
Well, no, I believe they did lift the cap on the liquid concentrate, so you could sell a vape cart, but you're still gonna have to pay that tax. Or the wholesale. I believe the wholesale is gonna have to pay it, and then it's gonna be passed on to the dispensary.
So the cap only applies to like dabs.
Yeah, I believe so. Well, at first they had it on the liquid, but I believe they raised it off the liquid and kept it on the solid concentrates.
Okay. I wonder what that means for RSO. If they consider that a liquid or a solid.
That's a great question. I have to make a note of that.
It's kind of both.
Yeah, right.
It's like non-Euclidean fluid or whatever that's called.
Schrodinger's concentrate.
Yeah.
Now, do you guys have adult use in Pennsylvania or just medical?
No, just medical. I don't think there's going to be any movement on adult use, at least until after the election. I guess it could have, there could be some stuff that happens in the lame duck session. But we're getting like a new governor, a bunch of new senators, like there's going to be, and so we'll see what happens. But I think that they are pretty much like ready to go because there's been like a bunch of Republican dudes holding cannabis, like ostensibly pro cannabis hearing. They were actually like, they're in whenever I watch stuff like that, it's like it's both hilarious and infuriating. Where you're watching people that don't like have any idea what they're talking about, bringing in experts who are purposely deceiving them in some cases, and you have to
the health experts from Department of Health.
Yeah, or like cops. They come and bring in a cop that's like saying whatever.
We got two cops in the advisory committee here in Vermont.
Yeah. I mean, like, so it's like it's very difficult to watch that stuff, but like they're moving, in that direction themselves. I mean, they were like that was the big holdup here. So, I mean, obviously, the type of legalization they're pushing is extremely restrictive, pro corporate. We're gonna have to fight tooth and nail for everything. I just hope we get home grow. I think the odds are in our favor there. It's really only New Jersey that has no legal home grow methods, even though they've legalized technically. Otherwise, there's usually at least medical home grow thrown in there.
Yeah, we had to fight tooth and nail to get that through in Vermont. They didn't want that at all, and we had to fight this to get like one caretaker can grow like fucking whatever it is, the normal amount of plants you can grow in Vermont, like 2 mature and like 4 immature.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. It's like that. How is that sustainable for a medical patient?
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, I know. It's just another one of those things that has become. It's just like I feel like because I don't think that I do not think that like there's like home grow is going to be say they legalize home grow across the country like in Canada, it's not going to create a significant dent in any corporate profits at all, because like the percentage of people that will home grow I don't think will change from what it is now. Maybe a few people will get hobby grow a cannabis plant for aesthetics. Why not? You know what I'm saying? Like as a house plant, who cares? If it's all legal, like why not have a cannabis house plant? But and there will be people that try, but it really is not super easy to grow really good weed. It's going to be hobbyists. very few people that actually are putting in the effort to grow their entire stash. It'd be like, so, there are people that grow their entire food supply in their garden, but most people have tomatoes, whatever, have a little garden in the summer, do the best they can, but they're still buying stuff at the grocery store, or wherever.
Sure.
You can't just, it's difficult to be completely self-sustaining. It's the same thing with cannabis. They're still going to be buying from the store for the most part, except for very few people that you wouldn't have grabbed those people anyway. those home growers, they just would have home grown, or they were already home growing, or like they're not gonna. It's just silly. I feel like they really just like put the kibosh on that because we want it, and like it's big to us, so they're like, well, we want it then.
Well, it seemed like in Vermont that this is just speculation purely, but it seemed like the reason was they wanted to funnel people into the dispensaries. If the patients are growing at home, then they won't come in and buy your $400 ounces of moldy
that's
garbage.
The theory. Weed. That's the theory, but like, when it plays out in real life, that percentage of people is extremely low.
Right. Well, actually, it was super hard to get into the medical program here in Vermont. Like, I have a psoriatic arthritis, which is a qualifying condition. But since a lot of the doctors here in Vermont get federal funding through various sources, they won't even talk to you about it, So
right.
So it was really hard. You basically had to have AIDS or cancer or be dying, and it's crazy hard to get into it. And meanwhile, I don't know. They're trying to funnel people into it, but it's just fucking impossible to get into there, even if I wanted to.
Jersey was like that too. They had like a really bad situation with the doctors where like very few people wanted to do it. There were scam doctors that would like make you come in, charge you $300 a month to keep your prescription up because you don't know. Nobody really knows how it works or anything. It didn't happen as much in PA because what they just kind of like had a bunch of. I mean, I don't know about wherever in Philly. What happened was a lot of just cannabis friendly only like doctors popped up and were like, and it was not expensive, not difficult. I mean, it was kind of expensive at first, but not like crazy expensive and exploitative. It would be like $150 a year or something like that. I think it's still like that. I have to maybe update my card this year. I don't use the dispensaries, but I feel like I should keep the medical card around for if I run into a legal issue. I could, honestly, that's like, because it's not really worth the money in terms of to get weed, because there's such better cannabis outside the program at better prices.
Are you a grower?
To get.
Do you grow?
No, but I don't grow. I have grown, but I'm not very good at it. But I have a lot of friends that grow, and I know a lot about it from an outsider, but not. I don't really grow anything. I'm not. Just like can't do it.
Me too.
I am determined though to one day learn, because it just seems like so great. I only watch growers. I'm like, oh, look at it growing. It's so like when you're good at it, you're growing like this amazing fucking bud is coming up, and you're just like, damn, like that must be such like a great feeling, smelling your little fresh cannabis, like. And I just like envy the people that love to garden, because it seems like such a nice, healthy, fun, like hobby.
Yeah, it does. I'm in the same boat. I've been meeting with all these growers, and like some of the best growers in Vermont here, and I've been getting all kinds of tips and tricks, and it's like I should probably just try it at one
point. I gotta do it,
I've been accustomed. It's like, my whole life.
even if it's a steep learning curve, I just know that if I keep doing it, eventually it'll be worthwhile. You know what I mean? You just have to have the stick-to-itiveness. Except for, you could get halfway through it and be like, you know what, I hate this. I hate growing.
Leave it for my girlfriend.
Yeah, I mean, like it's bugs. I was always worried. I mean, what killed me every time was like some sort of pest. It'd be like, gnats or whatever, or all the bugs that just like fuck it up. And then one time I killed a plant transplanting it, and just like whatever. I feel like you just gotta really go whole hog right away and like get all the correct equipment and follow like baking, right? Like you got to follow that to a T, or your brownies aren't going to come out good. It's not like cooking where you're just like fucking around, throw some shit in there, do whatever, take a bite, whatever. You got to like get it right from the beginning.
So is this true? I'm just kind of on the side rifling through your Instagram a little bit. It's still a felony to grow in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, this dude recently there was an article came out. Guy, I mean, I think it's indicative of probably hundreds of people across PA every year. But yeah, this guy got busted for had two tents in his basement. I think it seems like it was like a neighbor complaining or something. They came in, got a warrant. They found some kids' toys like near the tent, and so they charged this guy with a felony for growing weed, and then another felony for committing a felony in front of children. And it's it's that'll be able to take your kids away, all this stuff. It was like totally do permanent psychological damage to children,
and probably the parents as well.
And the parents, and over something that 60 miles away in New York is legal. It's just like,
well, and medical dispensaries are selling it, so I assume the state's making some money off that. And meanwhile, people are still getting their houses raided, and their kids taken.
It's just and all that comes down to some local DA that's just like, yeah, whatever, letter of the law. Got to make an example of this guy.
Some tough on crime DA who wants to fucking wave his dick around, or her dick around.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big deal. And cops and other people will say, we don't bust people for that anymore. Whatever. Right. That's not really a big issue. Well, if it's not that big of an issue, then it shouldn't be a problem putting it on the books and saying you can't come bust people for growing some plants in their basement.
If it's not that big of an issue, why is the state of Vermont right now training a brand new round of drug recognition experts to detect signs of impairment? Even though, according to the state's own consulting firm and at least one doctor, there is no consensus across the board for what cannabis impairment looks like. Meanwhile, they're training these cops. Basically, it's the same test as the DUI test for alcohol. And all I wanted from legalization was for the cops to leave me the fuck alone. I never cared about a retail market. It's interesting now because I'm involved in this story, but all I wanted was just to be left alone. Don't fuck with me and let me do my thing. Like, I'm not bothering anybody, but now we're training more cops. And now, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a spike in, cannabis DUI arrests.
I think so too, because I think they desperately want there to be numbers that they can point to that say, look, legalize cannabis, look at all these new DUIs. And then the laws are kind of written that way in some states. I know in Virginia, like if you got to keep your weed like in your trunk. If you have it like anywhere like within the reach of your, your hand or whatever, they can give you like open container if it's not like in its original packaging. And so they're going to be looking for that because that's what they want. It's funny to me because it's like, don't you think like cops would be like, all right, cool, this is actually less work for me. I don't have to arrest anybody that has weed on them, which probably happens all the time. But instead, they're worried about the fact that if weed's legal and someone steals your weed, I have to go look for their weed now. Like, yes, dude, you do have to do that. Someone came and stole a bunch of my property. You got to go look for them. That's your job. Like, it's just really all the bad stuff. It's because of stigma against cannabis, and it's some people, they really believe it, and some people just use it as an excuse to, cops use it as an excuse to mess with people. Legislators use it as an excuse to write corporate friendly laws. You know, jobs use it as a way to push out bad candidates for jobs. You know, your
Which is
family
funny
might
because you could
too,
be an
like,
alcoholic and that's totally fine.
yeah, I mean, like, you know, it causes strife within families and relationships, and a lot of it's just, you know, stuff that, because you watched that McGruff the Crime Dog shit when you were 10, you know, that stuff sticks with people.
It'll take a bite out of crime, man.
Yeah.
Did you have to do that in Pennsylvania, the DARE program? Did you guys have that shit?
I lived in Jersey, but I actually like kind of got out of into high school kind of when like DARE specifically came around, kind of. But we had kind of like the pre-DARE stuff, and it was like they would come. I remember they came and they had this like a science experiment, like a science fair thing that like folded out open, and it had like, this is meth, this is crack, this is what heroin looks like, this is what weed looks like, and it was just like, you know, these models of what it looks like, and and you know, they were like, oh, this is what weed smells like. And they like they lit some kind of like incense or something. It was like puffing the smoke into the audience, and it was all stuff like that. It was very funny.
Yeah, they used to send cops in to try to scare the fuck out of us. It was funny because my DARE officer actually was telling a story about these hippies that he busted. Turns out it was my aunt and uncle. And so that got interesting. Yeah. And I was like, hey, this story sounds familiar. Like, was that my aunt and uncle? He was like, we're not supposed to use people's names. I'm like, well, it's your fucking story, dude.
I know, dude. I mean, it's just like that, traumatizing too for kids, because you're like, oh, I guess my aunt and uncle are fucking criminals, and like,
oh, at that point my dad had already been arrested in this giant, it was the biggest drug seizure in Vermont at the time in 1991. It was like 50 tons. They were smuggling hash back from Canada, and they got popped for that. So, you know, I was kind of already,
wow, in like a truck.
It was in a boat. They had barrels full of it, and it was strapped to the bottom of the boat. From what I understand, it was sort of their own paranoia that got them caught, because they thought cops were coming to get them. So they started cutting the cargo loose, and then it floated to shore, and the cops found it and then did come to get them.
Yeah.
So, you know, I got to watch my dad get dragged off by the FBI on the Channel 3 News when I was 7.
Wow.
Yeah, we got to go visit a few maximum security prisons, so that was pretty awesome.
That's crazy. How long was he in jail?
I think he did 3 years, 3.5 maybe. The couple guys at the top, Billy Greer, he did 20 years. The other guy, Steve Hutchins, he did like 15, and then the other co-defendants did between 3 and 5 or something like that.
It's crazy. All those guys should just like be handed the keys to the kingdom now.
Like, well, now they're writing books about it. This guy from the Burlington Free Press, he wrote a book. It's called Hashtag, and the S is like a dollar sign. He's not a great writer, but I bought a copy just for the nostalgia. But yeah, they write about these guys like they're folk heroes. Meanwhile, like, I didn't see it that way. I just had to grow up without my dad, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, but that's what I mean. Like, these guys should be your dad should own Curaleaf, a $5 billion company. You know what I'm saying? Like,
well, instead, what they offered me was the social equity. They said, "Oh, we're going to give people a leg up in this market, people who are negatively impacted by the war on drugs." And whenever the government starts talking about helping the little guy, I'm always like, "What's this?" And what they offered was, "Hey, we're going to waive for the first year. We'll waive your application fee and your license fee," which, like, is the smallest cost. Like,
yeah, it's the tiniest thing.
Seriously. And then after the next year you pay 25%, and then the next year you pay 50%. So it gets kind of phased back in. But I mean, I don't even have enough money to do the fucking background check right now. They had to outsource background checks to a third party company, and now it's $475 to get your background check for each principal.
All this stuff, right? Like, so I actually had a meeting yesterday with a government regulator. I guess I shouldn't really say who. But it was a meeting with someone in the Northeast, right? And you know, I feel for the regulators in a way because like they just have to deal with the law as it's written. They can only do so much, you know.
Mhm.
The regulators, I met with the regulators in Jersey before, and you know, people are always like, why can't you just let us home grow? And he's like, we can't do anything. We can't add that to the law. We can only, you know, regulate shit as it's happening. We're trying to license people as much fast as possible. They're doing whatever. But they were saying like they're trying to help the legacy operators get licensed and get compliant with the laws. And I'm like, I think that's proof that like your laws, your compliance is too complicated. Like it should be easy to follow. I mean, like there shouldn't be a cottage industry of lawyers there taking like X amount of dollars from small businesses just to help them fill out their forms and stuff and follow so they're following pinpoint excuse me, they're following pinpoint instructions about every little detail involved in the growing and producing process, you know, production process. And it's so complicated that they need to have like go to a seminar to figure out how to fill out the forms even. All of that, you know, and they'll be like, oh, it's cheap though. We're waiving the fees. It's like, yeah, but there's still just pounds and pounds of red tape in there.
Well, I mean,
So
even if I wanted to do a small indoor grow or something, that's going to be tens of thousands of dollars in gear. You know, to do a small outdoor grow, I need my own property.
Yeah.
You know, and to do a retail, I need a storefront. To do manufacturing, I need all kinds of equipment. You know,
Right.
so like,
Even in a lot of states, even if you own property, say you in Vermont, especially, you can have like a farm, whatever, or you have big enough property. If it's not zoned exactly properly, you could be shit out of luck anyway.
well, Vermont actually did this thing this is the one thing I got to give them. They overrode the municipal zoning um, authority. So if your town holds an opt-in vote and it
Mhm.
passes, the town cannot do any funky shit to use their zoning to ban you from
Mhm.
starting a dispensary. Like so there is something in there that protects people from getting fucked by the zoning. But you know, there is these ag exemptions for sure. Like we had to have this
Yeah.
whole debate
No, that's
over
good though.
we had to have a real debate over whether or not growing weed outside in the dirt with the sun was agriculture. This was like a real debate. And I think what happened was the state saw the writing on the wall. They said, hey, if we call this agriculture, then every fucking grower in the state is going to qualify for these ag exemptions. And through Act 250, we're not going to get all of that extra tax revenue that we're after. So now we have to have this stupid fucking debate and say, hey, is this actually agriculture? Like, you mean
It's
growing a
funny
plant?
because like all those people want is the tax money, and they're limiting their own tax money by making it so difficult to get into the business. Like it's just like it just they never ever recoup even what they predict is going to be their how much tax money they're going to come in. It never happens, and it's because like half the market at least is going outside of the legal market and it's not necessarily because of the taxes even. You know, people think, oh well, you know, they're not paying taxes, so you know, I think cannabis is overtaxed for sure, but like, you know, California is a high tax state, right? There's like triple taxes on everything, whatever. Yet their prices are way more competitive than PA, which is like moderately taxed, and it's because of competition. Like if there's no competition, the market's not ever going to be anything. because there's plenty of competition in the legacy market. Everybody's actually literally competing to get to build their brand, to make the best product, to get it in the right people's hands. Like it's just like makes it's functioning like how you'd think a free market would function. And
Free
the
market.
legal market,
Does that exist?
I mean, I think the legacy market is one of the closest things to a free market, and because it's just so not regulated. It's just you live or die by your service or your quality of your products and stuff like that.
And this is something I was just writing about earlier today. Was I said, I bet the legacy market actually. There's been all this talk in Vermont about making this more environmentally friendly, and it's like, I bet the black market was in some ways more environmentally friendly. Look at the packaging requirements. Like, I can buy a pound in one bag. If I want to buy a pound from a dispensary, I'm gonna have to go buy fucking a bunch of individually wrapped ounces. If I want to buy a Lucy, like, why can't they sell Lucy's? Why are you putting only 50 milligrams of edibles in a package? Like, these are not environmentally friendly ideas here. You're going to create a fucking mountain of pre-roll tubes.
It's all of it could be done in bulk, like the way you buy like bulk granola and shit like that at the whatever, at the supermarket. But not just that. There's some of the regulations in place, like in California, right? Say you're a farmer and you're growing weed at your farm in Humboldt, California, and the people that live in Humboldt, California, if they want to buy it from the farm that's also in the same area, that a car has to come to the farm, take the weed to the distribution center, then the car has to take it from the distribution center back to the stores in Humboldt, because you're not allowed to buy directly from the farmer. And so, like, just for that reason, there's all this extra cars and shipping moving all around.
Same as in Vermont. You're not allowed to. You can sell to a wholesaler, but it's like, why can't people just go set up at the farmer's market? You bring a giant jar. You tell people to bring their own fucking jar. You fill it up, or hold your goddamn hands out. Just drop some, like, no package needed. And now these pre-roll tubes also have stickers and labels on them. They have caps a lot of the time. So this is just like a massive amount of waste for no fucking reason. Well, for safety.
Right. A lot of this is for the safety of who?
Exactly. Right, exactly. Like when you go buy alcohol, you're consuming poison, but like, we know we're doing it, and it's fine. It's socially acceptable.
And we're willing to allow people to take their own risks.
Right. And this was
be responsible for their own thing.
This was an adult use market, but it really felt like a lot of these regulations were about the kids. It's like, the kids aren't allowed to fucking have this. Why are we talking about kids so much?
Yeah. You know who never carded me? The dude I bought weed from in 7th grade. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, none of that stuff. Like, all through high school, I'd be like in gym class. That's where I got my weed. Like, no one was carding anybody. Like, and so, like, if there's places out there that are carding, it was a pain in the ass to get alcohol then, by the way, because you'd have to either like steal it from someone's parents or find somebody that's 21 to go get a fake ID. All this stuff was like huge firewalls for teens. We obviously got alcohol and stuff, but it was a pain in the ass.
Right.
And we had to go to great lengths to get it. Whereas to get weed, it was just like a phone call away, or see somebody in the hallway at school. You know what I mean? Like, so, I think having places where the adults have to go, or, there's a firewall between people, teenagers and weed, called a place that's IDing people and stuff like that. I mean, it's safer for kids than to have it be, all clandestine.
Right. And say your kids do get a hold of some weed, theoretically, there's going to be more safe tested weed on the street. So the weed they might get a hold of has a better chance of at least being safe.
Yeah, or at least being weed. Really, I mean, like honestly, when I think about stuff that's like not safe about cannabis, it's not actually the weed usually. I mean, unless it's got like mold issues or something like that. The stuff that ends up being like dangerous is stuff that's like fake weed. Sometimes remember like spice.
Oh yeah, the K2 and all that shit.
All the stuff that's like circumventing the law and being fake ends up in like vapes that have additives in them end up sometimes being dangerous, but the cannabis itself is like the least dangerous thing in your house. I mean, think about all the things under your sink and in your medicine cabinet that are more dangerous for a child to ingest than a cannabis leaf or a cannabis bud or something like that.
Great point. And I really feel like I always come back to parental responsibility here. Like I don't personally, I'm not like a libertarian, but like I don't think this should be the state's job to like, this is like, look, if you want to use cannabis, use it responsibly. Keep it away from your kids. Like I don't need a $30 million tax revenue going to Department of Health to print out pamphlets to tell me not to give the shit to kids.
They have such things as liquor cabinets. Like if are really worried about your kid getting into your liquor, you put it in a locked cabinet. They can't get to it. Wow. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're really concerned about your child getting, because that's the thing. It's not, nobody is concerned about their own child getting their weed. Everybody is concerned about their own child getting someone else's weed or some other kid getting some other weed. It's just like all about these other people. The people that have weed in their house and have children know where to put it so the kids can't get it. Like, and it's just like they know how to protect their own children from that stuff if they want to. I mean, I don't. If we're talking about a legal substance, isn't it time to start talking to children about this is something that adults do? We see there's bars and stuff everywhere, family parties, every beer, wine, it all exists in the general presence of children, people under 21, and they just go, oh, that's, you gotta be 21, that's for adults. You know what I mean? Like, it's not even
how hard is that? You just did it.
Yeah, nothing that we ever even consider or think about,
And what's wild is that all this talk about public health, this is one thing I keep coming back on, is like, how many 8-year-old school kids are taking Adderall right now? We know the public health risks of amphetamines. They have very predictable outcomes. And so for some reason, it's fine to feed a school kid amphetamines because he won't sit still during fucking history class. But we got to be 21 to buy a joint and jump through all these fucking hoops, man. It seems to be, there's definitely a lot of hypocrisy in the state's sort of what constitutes public health, really. When OxyContin hit the shelves, they were just like, oh, the manufacturer said it was safe. We didn't need more science then. With the weed, we always need more science. With the OxyContin, totally good, not addictive. They said so.
Meanwhile, Oxy was like the gateway drug that went from pharmaceuticals to illegal. I always say, it's like people say heroin, but there's like almost no heroin on the market anymore. It's mostly fentanyl. And so like that, which is another pharmaceutical. So and these are the and people often still call cannabis the gateway drug. And really the gateway drug is like Vicodin. And
it was alcohol for me. All of my worst decisions have been probably drunk.
Yeah, I mean that's true. And think about like what we allow the tolerance level is for the ills that alcohol causes, and the tolerance level for the ills that cannabis causes, which are much less. it's much reduced. So yeah, it's all stigma based. It's all so I always, whenever I hear stigma being kowtowed to, I always try to call it out, even because there's cannabis users that will be like, hey, it's not like I'm smoking it in public, and I want to be like, dude, smoking in public.
Yeah, that's another thing I'd love to see. Public
Like, don't
consumption.
apologize for it either. Like, we have a lot of internalized stigma as well.
You
That
can
I feel
smoke
like
cigarettes walking down the sidewalk, like
yeah,
I'd rather
yeah,
walk past someone and breathe in a hit of weed than a fucking stale cigarette.
or smell someone's perfume. Honestly, if we're talking
Oh
about
God, dude.
smells, that's the other. People start policing smells a lot with weed. It's always like, oh God. And the thing that pisses me off about that too is that weed smell is pungent, but it's not like overtly bad. It's kind of like it's like incense, which can be polarizing. Some people don't like incense, but very few people are like, oh God, get that smell away from me. Oh my God. You just like don't go to places where they're like burning incense, or you go outside for a minute or something where it's like a tolerance level for it.
And especially coming from Vermont, like I read a study that showed a 6 month dip in overdose deaths right at, or maybe it was just overdoses, a 6 month dip after states have legalized cannabis, and it doesn't seem to last after 6 months. But some of the emergency room nurses were like, "Look, any fucking break in the overdose is a fucking breath of fresh air for us." And
Yeah.
the number of people I've talked to alone who say they've quit drinking or they've gotten off of hard drugs using cannabis, it's like
Yeah.
it's
With those people don't want to hear that from those people a lot. There's a lot of people out there that are like, no, but they're still on drugs. They're on weed. And or like the rehab industry doesn't want to hear those numbers. They don't want to hear people say, I stopped drinking alcohol by using cannabis regularly,
right.
and or I stopped using heroin on a regular basis by utilizing cannabis. That's another conversation I don't think people want to hear. They really don't. I think that they get mad. It makes people mad.
I want to hear it. I love that shit.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. It's all stigma. We got to fight stigma.
All right, Brian, I want to catch this control board meetings. We've got about 10 minutes, but I want to ask you here. I see that you were invited to participate in a panel at the opening of a new medical dispensary as part of your book tour.
Yeah, I did do that.
How'd it go?
I got in trouble kind of because I kind of was like got there. I was like happy to do it because I wanted to promote my book, Cannabis: The Illegalization of Weed in America, available in bookstores everywhere.
Nice.
But then I got there and I was just like, people started asking questions we were taking questions from the crowd.
Who else was on the panel?
It was like me, a CBD dude, and Malcolm Kenyatta, who is a Philly-based state politician in PA. And people were asking questions. They're like, well, what about like my dude that I always get weed from? Like, why can't he sell weed here? And I was like, I mean, she teed it up for me. And I was just like, well, you know why? It's because these 5 companies, boom, 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 boom. So there's all these like signs and stuff everywhere. They made it so your dude can't get into this market. Only they can, and the comms director was like flipping out. But I actually made a friend that day because someone was like, afterwards, was like, hey man, that was awesome.
Well, what did they expect when they invited you on?
I mean, I don't know. This was very early on. I don't think I was known. Wasn't doing my comic strip at the time, so I was definitely not like known as a vocal critic.
Was there a comic that really put you on the map?
Probably the Andre the Giant book was like a New York Times bestseller. And that was like my first book.
What about in terms of cannabis? Was there a strip that really took off?
Oh, from Legalization Nation, I don't know. It's been kind of just like a slow and steady build. A lot of times stuff gets shared by on Instagram. A lot of times people that have like huge followers, like Grav Labs, will like reblog stuff. They have like 200,000 followers.
Yeah, I see a bunch of people sharing your stuff on
Yeah,
my feed.
yeah. It's been steady growth like within the cannabis scene. Um, and so it's good. And then I did these like maps of MSOs where it had all the different brands. And those
Oh,
got
I
shared
love
a
that.
lot.
I was going to
Yeah.
ask you about that. How do you dig all that shit up?
It's really just all accessible information. It's more about like finding the logo and mapping it out where it is. And that was just out of necessity because like brands would pop up all the time and you're like, well, are they any good? And then you look at it, it's like, oh, that's just one of Curaleaf's brands. Or like that's just like a Trulieve brand. So yeah.
And so
And they have weird
those shell
subsidiaries and
games.
stuff too.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. Those shell games are very fucking tricky though. They're clearly trying
Yeah.
to sort of hide
Oh yeah.
who's at
I
the
mean,
top.
once your brand is like tainted, you have to like sell it under a different brand name. Like you have no choice because people don't look at Curaleaf for quality. They might look at some other thing that looks cool and be like, oh, that looks good. But they know that like your brand is dog shit. They got to rebrand. They got to buy a new brand and build. This brand is already pretty big in Arizona, so we keep it and all that stuff like that.
Have you looked at every state that's legalized?
I'm not as up on all of them. Sometimes stuff comes in. I had to do a lot of research recently about the Missouri bill, what was going on there. But it's a lot of it is the same old story, same old song and dance everywhere, just with like little local tweaks to them. But it's a lot of this, you see the same situation the whole time.
And before we get out of here, I just stumbled upon this cartoon or this comic with Jeff from fucking Vermont Growers Association.
Oh yeah.
That is an astounding likeness, sir. That's awesome.
Yeah, I love Jeff. He rules.
I talked to Jeff really early on in this project, and immediately I was like, this dude is sharp. He knows his shit.
Yeah,
he knows the policy.
He really does.
He's in there. Dude, and I've been watching through all the old control board, the advisory committee meetings from last year and the board meetings and taking notes. And you see Jeff at the public comment section in the first fucking meeting. He walks up and he's right there, from day one, so I really like that dude too.
He knows his stuff. He knows a lot about that stuff.
Brian, this has been fantastic. We got 5 minutes left, and I always leave the last word for my guests here. I want to thank you again for your time. I hope we can do this again sometime down the road because this has been fascinating. But thank you for your time, and the last word is all you here, man.
All right, let me just again promote my book. Fox Brand. I have a bunch of books out. Please go out and look at them. There's probably something for you. There's a book about cannabis. And please check out and read my weekly strip, Legalization Nation, which runs on my Twitter, Fox Brand, my Instagram, Fox Brand. It also runs on King Features, Comic Kingdom website, and the Green State website, and it runs in the Tucson Weekly in print. If you live in Tucson, check that out.
Awesome. That's amazing.
Cool. Yeah, it's cool that it's in print now.
All right. Well, Brian, this has been an absolute pleasure, man. Stay safe out there and best of luck. Keep fighting a good fight, man.
All right. Peace out.